Hi everyone and welcome to DreamSpace HomeSpace series. My name's Amanda and this is our first episode on MakeCode for Microbit. Joining me today is Neve.
Hi everyone.
And we're so excited to get started with you today. Now there's also a question and answer section and we have the rest of our team. We have Richard, Corey and Kaylin and they're all there to answer any questions that you might have today throughout the live stream that we do. Okay, so just before we start and we get into things, we want to just explain to you what we're going to be doing today. So what we'll be doing is coding with MakeCode. So first of all, some of you at home might be thinking, what is coding? We've never heard of that word before. We've never done anything like this before. And that's perfect. That's okay. So coding is how we give a computer program instructions. So it's how we tell a computer or an app or a website or a video game how to do something. Okay. And it's nearly like a recipe. So if you think about baking or cooking at home and you have a list of instructions and you have to follow them step by step, that's kind of like coding. What we'll be using today is MakeCode. So MakeCode are like these visual blocks. You can kind of see them on the screen there in the image on the left. And they're color coded. So we're going to be using that to help us understand how coding works today. And what we'll be coding or what we'll be giving the instructions to is something called a microbit. So on this image on the left-hand side of the screen, you might see a square. And in the square, we have like a love heart icon. And that thing there is called a microbit. Now, don't worry, we don't need the physical microbit today. This is actually the physical microbit here. You guys don't need that at home. What we do today can be done just using your computer and your screen. So don't worry if you don't have the real microbit. But we're going to be giving our instructions or we're going to be telling a microbit what to do today. So on that, what is a microbit? Because hopefully now we know, okay, so coding will be telling the microbit what to do. That's what our coding is. It's our instructions. But what is a microbit? There's a lot of text on the screen here that you might see telling us a lot of stuff about the microbit. And I don't want you to get worried about this at all. It's just basically showing you how cool this thing actually is. If you look at it here, even compared to the size of my hand, it's really small, okay? It's really light, it's really thin, but it's so cool. This microbit can do lots of stuff, and you're going to see this on your screen at home as well. So what is a microbit? First of all, it's called a microcontroller. So it's able to control and understand these instructions through code and do lots of stuff, lots of really cool stuff that you're going to see. One of my favorite parts, and I think our favorite part in DreamSpace, Neve will show you this, is that it has 25 LED lights on the front of it. So you might see the little dashes on the screen there. So they're LED lights, they're red lights. So we can get this microbit to display things for us, which is so, so cool. And you're going to be doing this really shortly. The other thing it has, which is brilliant, is it has two buttons. So it has an A and a B button, A and B. So I can click on these buttons and I can get it to do things. In your case at home today, you can click on the screen. So you can click A and B. And again, you can see what the microbit can do with these buttons. And apart from those really cool things, those things alone would be really exciting. We can do loads of stuff. But actually, this thing has lots more. This microbit can do so much more because it has lots of sensors built into it. Okay. And there's probably a lot of new words here. But what I mean by sensors is this microbit can pick up movements. It can pick up the light. It can pick up the temperature in the room you're in. And it can also acts like a compass. So it could even navigate us around if we wanted to use it like a compass. So like I said, it's small, but it's so, so cool. And Neve is now going to bring you through how you can get coding with this. What's really, really important before I hand you over to Neve is to know that you can pause this video at any time because we're going to be showing you information and you might be trying to watch Neve show you something and then you might be trying to jump and do it yourself. Don't worry, you can just click on pause and then you can go and do and practice what Neve has told you. And then you can go back and click play and continue with the video afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over to Neve now and she's going to show you how you can get started.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, So the first thing we need to do in order to get started is to type makecode.microbit.org into our web browser. The first page that will open up is the home page. So there's lots of different things on the home page. There's my projects, tutorials, live coding, games. There's loads of different things there. So
Niamh, I might just
today
stop you
we're
there,
going to...
sorry, because we just can't see your screen at the moment. So we might just have a little delay, I think. Yeah, we're good. Excellent. Perfect. We're all caught up. You're good to go, Niamh.
Great. So the first page that will open up is our home page. And in our home page, we can see, as I said already, our projects, our tutorials, live coding, games, loads and loads of different things. Okay, today we're going to go step by step through the basics of block coding with MakeCode for Microbit. So we're going to create our own new project. But if you've some spare time before next week's webinar, I would advise going and maybe looking at some of the tutorials. Okay, so I'm going to click into New Project. And this screen is known as our work screen. So there's 3 different sections to our work screen or our work area. On the left-hand side, we can see our microcontroller, our microbit that Amanda has gone through already. In the middle, we can see different sections with different names. Okay, and they're all color coded. And over here to the right-hand side, we can see our work area. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give my project a name. So down here in this little box down here called Untitled, I'm going to change that to Niamh. Okay, and I'm going to click out of it. And if you have any problems, like your internet buffers or your screen freezes, like mine did just there, one way of rectifying this is to click on the home button and then click back into your project. So that's my project that I just named there, and that should clear any problems. Okay, so over here to the left-hand side on my microcontroller, I can see the 2 buttons that Amanda was talking about, button A and button B. And down along the bottom, I can see lots of different pins, and the pins are visible in gold down here. Okay, so the work here in the middle sections are all color coded, and that's where we're going to get our blocks from. Okay, so if you find yourself wondering, I wonder where Niamh got that forever block, you just have to look at its color and then find the section that's most similar to the color of our block that we're looking for and see if it's in here. So there's our forever block. Okay, so just bear that in mind as the episode goes on. And then, as I said already, this right-hand side is our workspace. Okay, so we've 2 blocks already in our workspace. We've on start and we've got forever. Okay, so for this episode, we won't need the forever block. So I'm going to demonstrate how to delete a block. So in order to delete a block, I have to click on it. And how I know I have it in my hand is it highlights around the edges in yellow. Okay, so that's how you know you have it in your grip. I'm going to move slightly over towards the middle. And as I get closer to the middle, a purple bin will appear. So by letting go of my block, it will get recycled back into the section where it belongs so that if I need it later on, I can take it out again. Great. Okay. So I'm going to use my onStart starter block to demonstrate how we show a string. So a string is one of the most basic things that we can do in coding. So I'm going to get my string block out of basics. So show string. And in order to connect my block to my onStart block, I need to ensure that it highlights in yellow like it has done just there. And when I let go of it, that means it will connect in or it will embed in. And as we can see, it already has immediately started to play hello. Okay. However, if my block lands out here and turns a grey-yellow color, that means my block is not part of my program. So it's not yet connected. So you have to be really, really careful when ensuring that your blocks are connected, because otherwise they won't run when your program is run if they're like this. So I'm going to connect it back in, and I'm going to change hello to welcome, because you're all very welcome to this very first microbit webinar. Okay, so our onStart block lets us know that every time our program starts or restarts, it's going to show whatever we input in here. So welcome. Okay, so that's our very first thing. So if you would like to pop the webinar on pause and see if you can connect a block into our onStart starter block, maybe a string. See if you can connect a string and change what the string says. I'm going to delete this now, and we're going to move on to something a little bit more difficult called inputs. And Amanda already mentioned that inputs are how the microbit can take in information from its environment. So I might get Amanda to recap on that just for a moment.
Yeah, no problem, Niamh. So the really cool thing about this microbit that I was saying is that, like Niamh said, it can take in all this information from the environment that it's in. So let's think about how would this little thing take information in from its environment? Well, first of all, it would take information in because we pressed on the buttons. So if I press button A, microbit's going to take that information in. If I press on B, it's going to take that information in. So there's one way that the microbit can take in information. The other thing is when we move it certain ways, it will pick up that information because of the sensors we talked about earlier. And then even down to things like the temperature and the light sensor, they're all interpreting information from their environment. So the temperature sensor obviously is taking in how hot or cold it is based on where the microbit is in the room. So all the time we're saying taking information in. So this is taking information in, and remember that's an input, okay? And there's lots of different inputs, and Niamh will show you them now in the menu.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Okay, so now I'm going to click into inputs. And these are all the different things that Amanda was talking about. So for this task, I'm going to use an on button A pressed input. However, we've two different buttons, don't we? We've on button B pressed too. So I'm going to have a look for that in my inputs. So it's not there. And the reason it's not there is because we need to drag out another on button A pressed block. And then we need to use the scroll down arrow in order to change it to B, like that. So we see the nice bright pink color. However, if we left it like this, that would mean that the second on button A pressed block that we took out from the inputs wouldn't run. And the reason for this is you can't give the same button, so we can't give A two separate commands because we can only press button A once, and then the computer would start to get confused and wouldn't know which one to pick. So we always have to give it a different name. Now, so we already know how to drag and connect a block. So I'm going to go back to my string and I'm going to add a string in this time. And this time I'm going to change the string to my name because I'm going to make my program personal to me. So I'm going to add in Niamh for on button A pressed. And I'm going to add in a string to my on button B pressed. And I'm going to change this to Amanda because Amanda is helping me out today.
Yay.
In our microbit webinar.
I'm delighted I get to feature.
Great. So the difference between the inputs and our starter block is now we can give our microbit options. So we've given it an option A and an option B. So when I press A, it will show my program for A. And when I press B, it will show my program for B. Whereas when we use the starter block, it would just keep restarting that program. Okay, so the starter block on start is useful when we're just creating one program. But when we want to create maybe multiple options, it's quite useful to use some of the input blocks. So now I'm going to press B and it shows Amanda, which is our code for on button B press, and I'm going to press A, which shows Neve. So now I'm going to add a bit more to my program. So the first thing I'm going to add underneath my string is an icon. So I'm going to drag out this show icon block and I'm going to connect it underneath my string. So I have to watch and see what area highlights yellow in order to make sure it's going to connect to the right place, like that. If I wanted to put my icon before my string, I would have to drag it up to the top and connect it in here. But I actually want my string on top, so I'm going to bring my string back up. Okie doke, so I'm going to have a look through my icons. And let me think, what sort of a mood am I in today? Well, I'm in quite a good mood because I enjoy doing these webinars. So I'm going to pick the smiley face as my icon and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Okie doke. So I've picked the smiley face as my icon and now I'm going to run my code again. So I'm going to press A and see what happens. It shows Neve, which is my string, and it shows my smiley face. So again, feel free to pause this webinar if you want to perhaps take out an input or if you want to make your string or your icon more personal to yourself. However, I'm going to continue on and I'm going to find another block in basics to add in. So I'm going to add in a show LED this time. And I'm going to put my show LED at the very bottom. So I'm going to connect it in like that. Now, something cool about the show LED block is you can create your own icon. So although the icons are pretty cool, they're already preloaded onto the program. So there's only a certain few to choose from. So what if you want to create your own? So I don't see any letters there. So I'm going to create the letter N because my name starts with an N. So I'm going to create it by clicking on the square boxes or the LED lights as Amanda already went through. Okay, so I'm going to click on it and when it turns white, that means it will light up once our program is run. So that doesn't really make an end just yet, so I'm going to have to continue on. And something really cool about the show LED block is if you make a mistake, it's really easy to rectify. For example, like that. You just have to re-click on the square that you don't want to light up and it'll go from white to blue again, and that means it won't light up once your program is ran. So I've created a nice N there and I'm going to run my program again. So I'm going to press my A button. So I've got Neve. I've got my smiley face and I've got my N. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show now is how to include a pause. Perhaps you want to emphasize something in your code. You can add in a pause block and that will do just that. So I'm going to have a look in my basics section for my pause block and I'm going to drag it out. Now I want my pause to occur between my string and my icon block. So I'm going to have to make sure that I connect it in the right place. If I left my pause out here, I would have a bug in my code because it wouldn't connect or it wouldn't run in my program. It wouldn't be connected to my program. So in order to fix my bug, I need to debug. So a bug is an error that can occur in your program. And in order to fix that, you need to take out the error. So you need to connect it. So I'm going to drag it up here between the string and the icon and make sure that I have it in the right place. And I'm going to let go of it. So now I have debugged because my pause will play in my program. However, I want my pause to be maybe 1 second long, to last for 1 second. So I'm going to use the drop-down menu to choose 1 second. And I'm going to click out here. And last but not least, I'm going to press my A button to see how my program runs. So Neve. We have our pause, our smiley face, and our N. So again, to reiterate, I would recommend pausing the webinar now and maybe trying to use an input to make your own program with a string, an icon, an LED, and a pause block. But one thing that's really important when you're coding is the order in which your blocks play. So Amanda, did you notice anything about the order in which my blocks played?
Yeah, so I suppose, Niamh, we talked about it at the start that it's so important to have the sequence set up. So the sequence is just the step-by-step list of instructions. So what I noticed is your step-by-step list of instructions there start on button A. So when we press A, and then it's literally going from one block to the next, all the way down that list that you've just made. So that sequence or list of instructions is really important. And like you said, if you want to bring the pause block in after your name, for example, you need to make sure that's exactly where that block is placed. Otherwise, if you had just dropped it in at the bottom there, that wouldn't have worked out the same way. So that's what we meant about the instructions having to be really, really clear. So you did a really good job there. And what's interesting is the arrow, Niamh. So the arrow gives options. Is that what you were showing us there?
Yes, so the arrow allows us to change how long we want the pause to last for. So if I wanted it to last for 2 seconds, I'd click on 2 seconds, 1 second, vice versa. So it allows us to change how long we want the pause to last.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So you can see there the importance of our step-by-step list, that the microbit can't figure things out for itself or can't interpret our environment. So we need to make sure that our list is super clear. So if you guys are playing around at home there and you want the microbit to do something, make sure that you're really, really clear for the microbit to understand what you want.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Amanda.
No problem, Niamh.
Okay. So we've learned about the virtual microbit, which is what we're using in this episode, the microcontroller over here. We've learned the difference between the virtual and the real microbit. We've gone through some of the basic blocks and we've covered some of the input blocks. So now we're going to take things up a gear and we're going to create our very own animation. But what actually is an animation? Amanda, can you tell us what an animation is?
Yeah, so I was just thinking there. I think when we think about an animation, we're thinking about the illusion of movement. So making it look like something's actually moving. So it would be so cool maybe, and I don't know, I think maybe Niamh, this is what you're thinking, if we could use like our LED lights to somehow create this illusion that the screen is, things are moving on our screen maybe?
Yes. Okay. Well, to make it even more interesting, Amanda, I think I'm going to use a different input block. So I'm going to have a look in here.
Brilliant.
I think I'm going to use the on shake.
Cool.
So I'm going to drag it out here. And the cool thing about the on shake input is it adds an extra button here on our microbit. So a shake, and you can see as I hover over the shake, the virtual microbit does a virtual shake. However, if you had the real microbit, you would have to physically shake it in order for it to run the program. Okay, so I'm going to create my very own animation. And I'm going to use a mixture of show icon and show LED blocks. So I'm going to drag out a show icon block and I'm going to look for some inspiration in my show icons. Actually, you know what? The very first one that popped up was a heart. So I'm going to try and create the illusion of a flashing heart using the movement and the LED blocks. Okay, so I'm going to add in a couple of more blocks in order to create that illusion of movement. So I'm going to go back into my basics and I'm going to drag out another show LED block. And this time I'm going to try and create a big empty heart because in our show icon block we have a big full heart. So I'm going to try and create a big empty heart by clicking on the squares for the, oh, mistake there. So just re-click on the square if you want to rectify any errors. I think that looks like a pretty good big empty heart.
Yeah.
But I want my animation to have more than 2 blocks in it. So I'm going to keep going. I might create a small heart this time, so a small full heart. So I'm going to drag out another show LED block. And I'm going to pop it in underneath. And this time I'm going to try and create a smaller full heart. Now, very good. And I'm going to go once more and I'm going to try and add in one more show LED block. And this time I'm going to try and do a small empty heart.
Great artistic skill there, Niamh.
Thank you very much. So I have 4 blocks in my animation at the moment. I have a mixture of show icon and show LED blocks. Okay, so I might give it a go. I might shake my microbit and see what happens, how my animation looks.
So Niamh, do you shake your computer to do this?
No, you don't shake your computer. You just press on the shake button that's on your microcontroller and it acts as a shake. So it shakes your microbit for you.
Okay, very cool. That looks brilliant.
So it is pretty cool. It does look good, doesn't it? But let me think. I'm trying to think of how I could make it more exciting. I wonder how I could repeat it 3 times without stopping. Now, there's a challenge for all you guys watching here today. If you want to pop this webinar on pause and try and figure out how I could get my animation to repeat itself 3 times without stopping. Amanda, could you shed some light? How do you think I could get my animation to repeat 3 times without stopping?
Yeah, well, I suppose people watching might think, well, why don't I just write out those instructions 3 more times? And you can definitely do that. So you could get those 4 blocks and you could drag them in 3 more times and you'd have a long list of blocks and it will work. But 1, you've had to take a little bit more time to do that because you've had to keep dragging those blocks out. And 2, it means our code is pretty long. And really in coding, we want to try and get the instructions to work as quick as possible. So the quick way around this is to use a really cool category and a really important coding concept called loops. So loops are ways that we can repeat our sequence of instructions for a set amount of times. So I could get a loop block, which is just 1 block. I could get it to wrap around that sequence that you have there, Niamh, those 4 LEDs. I could wrap it around that and I could say, do you know what? Repeat these 4 blocks 3 times. And then the way it will work is it will go through our list. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 LEDs and then loop back up to 1 and go again and then loop back up and go again for the 3rd time before it stops because we've just said to do it 3 times. So that's a really cool thing that we can use in coding no matter what we're doing. It doesn't just have to be animations, but I think in this instance it's going to look really good. So you can try that one out maybe, Niamh.
Thanks a million, Amanda. And something Amanda highlighted there is that there's more than one way oftentimes when we're coding to do things. So you can come up with loads of different ways often to do the same thing when coding. And that's really important to remember. So as the episodes go on, I want you to pause the webinars and try and come up with a different way of doing the same thing as I am demonstrating. And that shows that you're problem solving. Okay, so I'm going to go with the more efficient way Amanda mentioned by using a loop. And I wanted to repeat 3 times. So I see this block allows me to preset the number of times I wanted to repeat. So I'm going to drag this block out. So at the moment, it's not connected to any code, so it's not going to do anything until I connect it. So one thing Amanda mentioned was I need to wrap it around the blocks in which I want to repeat. So only the blocks I want to repeat, which is more or less all the blocks in my animation program. So I'm going to insert it here at the top, and I know that it's going to connect around all of my blocks because they move out slightly, so you can gauge where you want to insert it. Okay, now it says repeat 4 times. So I want my animation to repeat 3 times. So I'm going to change the number of times it repeats to 3. And now I'm going to go back. I'm going to shake on my microbit and see what happens. Once, twice, 3 times. So it's after repeating itself 3 times, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. But again, it wouldn't be incorrect to add in all the blocks 3 more times. It would just take a lot longer. Okay.
And Eve, there's a question here, which I think maybe you can show us on the screen. So what if we wanted to see our animation and then just see our name once? We don't want to see our name 3 times. We just want to see our name once.
Excellent. That's an excellent question. So if we want our name to only appear once, we need to bring out a string block, because a string allows us to show characters and letters. And we need to put it in on top of our repeat block. So not into our repeat block, on top of or underneath our repeat block. So if we put it in at the bottom, it would still play. So if we inserted it in here, it would play at the end, or if we inserted it at the top, it would play at the start. But we have to make sure not to insert it inside of the repeat block, which is our green block here. And then obviously, if we wanted to play our name, we need to insert our name. And we need to click out. So now I'm going to show you how that would work. So it should only play Neve once, and then repeat our animation 3 times. Once,
excellent.
Twice, 3 times. Perfect. Very good. So now that's pretty much it for today. If you'd like to pop the webinar on pause, you can create your own personal animation using a mixture of show icon and show LED blocks. And I'm going to pass you over to Amanda, and Amanda's going to go through what we covered in today's episode, along with this week's home challenges.
Perfect. Great, thanks, Neve. So we're just going to go through up here what we learned today, okay? And hopefully we learned a good few things. And then after we go through this, I'm going to give you a home challenge to do. So you're going to have a week until next Monday when we pick up where we left off with microbit and we build on our knowledge. But first of all, let's just recap on those few things we looked at today. So there's 4 important things I want to highlight for you, okay? So the first one is sequence. So we mentioned this word a few times. What is a sequence? So remember, a sequence was just the list or the order of our instructions. So like Neve even showed us there at the very end, if we want to see her name first and then the animation, we have to put it in that order, her name first and then the animation. So making sure our sequence is laid out. Now, when you're doing your home challenge, it's important that you lay things out properly and use the correct sequence. So just keep that one in mind. The second thing we looked at was a bug. So a bug was an error in the code. And sometimes people get upset thinking, oh, I've made a mistake. Do you know what? Even the best coders and the best programmers in the world are constantly making mistakes. They constantly have bugs in their code. And the key thing is they do not give up. They go, where is the mistake? And they find it and they fix it. And then they are so proud of themselves, which you should be, because you fixed where you've gone wrong and you've got it working properly again. So don't worry if there's a bug. Just remember to look through your code and think, what have I done wrong? And let me try and fix this. The third thing we talked about a lot were inputs. So remember, with our microbit, it has the ability to take lots of information in from the environment, our buttons, our movements, all of those things. And it's not just microbits that use inputs. Apps use inputs, websites, video games, all of these things use inputs, and they're all done through code. And then finally, the last thing we looked at were loops. And loops are so handy. You just saw there. It meant that we didn't have to rewrite out our instructions over and over again. We could just write our list of instructions or our sequence once, and then we could say, do that for a set amount of times. And that saves us so much time in the long run, especially as we do harder projects and we need to speed things up or condense our code down a bit. Okay? So, home challenge time. So let's see how we get on with this, okay? What we want you to do is to create 3 animations on 3 different inputs. So let's think about this for a second. So I'm saying 3 different inputs. So what were inputs again? Well, they were our buttons, weren't they? So on button A was one input, on button B was a second, On shake was a third. There was 3 we looked at today, for example. And for each of those inputs, could we have a different animation? But not just any animation. We want this animation to motivate you and your family at home to get up and do something, get up and be a bit active for a couple of minutes even. So I've done out an example here that I want to show you. And what you're going to see is the code on the right and the animation on the left. And let's see what exercise do we recognize this as. So we have jumping jacks going on here. Our jumping jacks. And you can see here the code is saying just do this 15 times. So it's going to be 15 jumping jacks that we're going to look at. So that's just one exercise. Now the animation you do doesn't have to show the exact exercise, but maybe it's just an image that reminds you, you know what, this is the exercise. So you can say to your mom and dad, your brothers and sisters at home, I want us to do this when we see this animation. I want us to do jump up in the air. I want us to jog on the spot, whatever it is. But we want 3 different animations for 3 different inputs. Next week, we're going to up the level, okay, that you guys are going to code at, and we're going to do some more advanced things. Before we do that, though, I want us to have a little look at some of the questions and answers that we come across. So, Niamh, we might just have a look at these. So one question I seen here was asking, can we use A and B at the same time? Is there an input that we can use A and B at the same time? And how would we find that one?
Yes, there is indeed. So we would need to go back and pull out our on button A pressed block. And then we would need to use the scroll down menu where we found our B. And underneath our button B, there's also an option for A plus B, which will add another button onto our microcontroller, just like the shake appeared when we dragged out on shake.
Okay, so that's really interesting.
Button will appear on our microcontroller.
So we have 3 ways of using buttons, Niamh, then. So we have button A on its own, button B on its own, and then we can have the button A and B at the same time.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, cool. Okay, brilliant. Okay, and then the other question, just to highlight before we wrap up and even say thanks, I suppose, is there's a question here about, can we use this app not on the browser? So can we use this app away from the internet?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. Okay, yes, you can. And the app is available on the Microsoft Store. And the name of the app is MakeCode for Microbit. So if you found that your internet was maybe hindering your progress today, I would recommend maybe downloading the app for next week's webinar, because you won't need the internet when you're using the app version. So it's available on the Microsoft Store and it's called MakeCode for Microbit.
Brilliant. Thanks, Niamh.
And pretty much that's really it for today's webinar. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. You can now officially call yourself a coder. And if anyone would like to watch this webinar back or would like to access the home challenges, they are available at the link on screen now.
Great. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks a million. Bye.